Mayor Johnston, is Denver a sanctuary city?
Folks use that term differently. I can tell you what Denver does. We do not.
Okay, I take that as a yes. Mayor Johnston, no, yes or no? I take that as a yes.
Denver Mayor Mike Johnston grilled in front of members of Congress today over the city's so-called sanctuary status. Johnston, in return, touting Denver's response to an immigration crisis he says was sent to his doorstep. Thank you for joining us for Denver 7 News at 6. I'm Jacqueline Allen.
I'm Shannon Ogden. Glad you're with us tonight. Mayor Johnston was joined by mayors from Chicago, New York City, and Boston to testify before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Now, today's hearing comes after Denver helped nearly 43,000 newly arrived immigrants between December 22 and October 24. The city estimates it spent $79 million on the immigration crisis. $30 million of that was reimbursed by the federal government.
While Republicans on Capitol Hill point their fingers at Johnston, let us not forget that Republican Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, ordered thousands of immigrants to be bused from Texas to Denver. In January 2024 press release, his office said more than 15,700 people were bused into our city.
Now, after 5 hours of testimony, hearing wrapped up late this afternoon.
Scripps News Group's Patrick Terpstra joins us live from Washington with the key takeaways. Patrick, a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely, Jacqueline and Shannon. And so what is so important to realize is that the mayors of Denver, but also Boston, Chicago, New York, they all have something in common. They come from cities that restrict exactly how much they can cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE. These are so-called sanctuary cities. But Denver Mayor Mike Johnston said that that is a term that he rejects. He says Denver cooperates with ICE all the time as long as federal officials have a warrant. That is something that is spelled out and required in both state and city law. This led to one of the more contentious moments in the hearing between Mayor Mike Johnston and Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
We do coordinate with ICE presently. I'm happy to tell you what we do on that. So we've honored detainer requests more than 1,226 times over the last
What about
years.
What about before a warrant? There are many issues before a warrant.
So if what happens is if ICE has sends us a detainer request.
Well, you have local law enforcement officers, Mr. Mayor, who are unable to coordinate with ICE to even get the initial warrant.
And Johnston said to lawmakers that Denver has been able to really find a balance between offering resources to the thousands of immigrants that came to the city in recent years, but also making sure that criminal undocumented immigrants, those immigrants that come to the country and commit crimes, that they are rounded up and ultimately deported, that they help ICE to do that. Unlike a lot of lawmakers, Johnston stayed calm the whole time, spoke in very short-answered and measured tones, realizing that there was really so much at stake. At the end of this, he said that he thought he did a good job in really expressing where Denver is coming from when it comes to these immigration policies.
I think we had the chance to explain what Denver does, why we think it's a common sense policy, why we think we've been able to successfully manage this crisis at the same time as reducing crime in the city. And so some folks weren't that interested in listening to answers, but some were. And so I felt like we got to make the case on behalf of Denver for why we think this policy works.
So now he flies back to Denver, and there is this question of what happens next. Republicans here on Capitol Hill have said that they want to restrict federal funding to any place that they deem a sanctuary city. I asked the mayor about that. I said, what would you do if that happens, given how much money the city relies on from Uncle Sam? He said if there was any attempt to restrict those federal funds, he would take Congress to court. Jacqueline, Shannon?
All right, we heard a very measured response from the mayor, but when we're talking about the attitudes that we saw there and the reception toward Mayor Johnston and Denver and how that compared to other cities and mayors that were represented, what did you see?
Well, compared to the other mayors, certainly Johnston was a little more reserved. We saw Boston's mayor, for example, really fighting back and challenging lawmakers. That is not the tact that Denver's mayor took. They had worked for a very long time getting prepared for this hearing, not trying to make any waves, realizing that they did not want to upset lawmakers that, again, at the end of the day, could try to restrict those federal funds. But at the same time, the mayor did want to make sure that he defended those policies that those lawmakers do deem as sanctuary city policies.
And Patrick, we got a little taste from Comer and Boebert there, but by and large, did committee members seem satisfied with Mayor Johnston's answers?
Well, it really depends on the committee members. Democrats, of course, came into this hearing saying that there was nothing to see here, and they were supporting Denver and other big cities. Republicans, on the other hand, they were visibly upset. They challenged all of these mayors time and time again. They're supposed to ask questions, but in some cases they seemed more like speeches. It's really hard to imagine that they changed their minds on Denver or any of these other cities. This could just be the opening round of several ahead as they try to really fight back against these cities for what they deem as sanctuary city policies.
All right, Patrick Terpstra at the Capitol tonight. Thanks for reporting on this.
Good work, Patrick. The city's paying an elite law firm $1,000 an hour to represent them at the congressional hearing. Denver City Council previously approved up to $2 million for legal representation. Before the hearing, Denver 7 Investigates sat down with Mayor Johnston and asked him if he thought that cost was justified.
This is meant to protect and support all of our city employees from all of the actions that they took, and also to protect the city from having to be consumed by this hearing when we want our employees focusing on doing the day-to-day job of picking up trash and answering people's calls and policing the streets. And so we didn't want to take a huge amount of our city employees' time to do that. And so we think we'll be probably among the lowest of any of them.
Leaving early to spend time with his team. Mike Johnston.
Now, you can watch Denver 7 Investigates' full interview with Johnston on denver7.com/investigates.
And as we're getting a sense here, partisan politics was front and center at that hearing today. Republicans, who obviously control the committee, took plenty of shots at the Democratic mayors, but the Dems took a few of their own.
Now, Denver 7's Brandon Richards shows why some were not surprised by the political rhetoric flying back and forth.
Well, Republicans have been making a big deal about this hearing for weeks now, saying that this would be the day when all of these mayors, including Mayor Johnston, would be held accountable. But there wasn't actually a lot of new information presented.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm?
Denver Mayor Mike Johnston found himself in the political hot seat Wednesday, appearing before Congress facing questions and accusations about Denver's immigration policies.
You were shipping illegal aliens to Aurora. Their crime was increasing.
The hearing was heavy on politics, but light on new information. Most issues Republicans highlighted were already publicly known. The hearing, however, provided them a venue to go after Johnston.
And as a police officer, I am here to make sure that we are uplifting the voices of the victims of these crimes.
DU political science professor Phil Chen says the hearing was always going to be a political show.
It's largely a political spectacle. That was what it was intended to be, and that's, I think, what it ended up being.
Democrats on the committee also took their political swipes at President Trump.
Have any of you been made aware of any immigrant that has had 34 felony convictions that has still been able to roam around in your cities? Anyone?
Chen says committee members aren't the only ones who could benefit. He says the mayors could use the hearing to their advantage.
Being able to stand up and visibly push back against Republicans in Congress could actually win some political points in their cities.
Meanwhile, in Denver,
this is a common trend where immigrants are a scapegoat, usually during political stunts.
Immigrant advocates express support for Mayor Johnston defending the city's policies.
I hope he doesn't allow them to push him around, because I know that he's probably under a lot of pressure right now.
Back in D.C., a Republican congresswoman made waves when she announced plans to refer the mayors to the U.S. Department of Justice for possible criminal investigation. Where things go from there will be up to the DOJ. Brandon Richard, Denver 7.
So the term sanctuary city really was at the heart of that hearing today. Denver has never declared itself a sanctuary city. Governor Polis says Colorado is not a sanctuary state.
This narrative is false that Colorado is any way, shape, or form a sanctuary state. We are not.
Some lawmakers have argued that Colorado's immigration laws make it a sanctuary state, similar to the line of questioning we heard from Congresswoman Lauren Boebert there in Washington.